Hello, can you hear me now? Yeah. Oops. Go ahead. What's going on? Yeah.
Bakhmut.
Bakhmut what? Has fallen finally?
No, it's just disappeared
It
down the
disappeared.
memory hole.
It did? Yeah, whatever happened to Bakhmut?
I didn't see a single
Whatever
word on
happened
it
to
this
Bakhmut?
week. It's just gone.
It was a
Never
thing.
happened.
It was a thing until it wasn't a thing anymore.
I saw it mentioned once, in fairness. Curveball Kirby, U.S. spokes. What is he now? White House. He's been promoted. White House press spokesperson. Telling CNN that Bakhmut was of little strategic importance.
Right.
That's not what you were saying for 3 months solid. Okay, whatever. We knew they were going to say that after the fact. Yeah, no mention of Bakhmut, but of course, Ukraine's still pretty hot, Maybe this is the counter-offensive. Maybe it isn't. They're still talking up the big counter-offensive. What we saw all week, though, is it struck me as being an escalation in the number and types of attacks by Ukraine over the battlefield into Russia proper. There was a big uptick in those attacks last week. One of them kind of lasted, more than 24 hours in the news cycle. We can talk about that in a minute. There was a drone strike in Krasnodar Thursday, footage of that hitting residential area, I think. Yesterday, Saturday, shelling of residential houses in Belgorod. There's some crazy footage. Let's play this. This is also Belgorod region. It's obviously somewhere more remote. As you can see, it's not the city proper, but what crack were they thinking, or smoking rather, when they fired this off? This is an MLRS strike, so it's a multiple rocket launcher, pepper a whole wide area with a single launch from a single battery, I guess. I think that's it. I think it might have been a dam. They were trying to hit a dam or something. But the biggest event probably happened earlier in the week. I think Monday. Maybe this was the how do we bury Bakhmut story to keep up the Slavo-Ukrainian news in the Western media. That was the bizarre attack involving numbers kept changing. Up to 80 Ukrainian soldiers landed at an incursion force into Russia proper.
Yeah.
In some small towns just over the border, also Belgorod region. What a shit show this was. The most famous thing, people have probably seen this already, was the result of Russia basically liquidating the entire operation, with streets littered with Humvees, to which the Americans answered, well, yeah, no, that's not us. But anyway, Ukrainians shouldn't be using that stuff. Did I send you? What? I'm not even sure what I sent you. Is that the link I just sent you now?
It's the same one, actually. Is it? No, it's not.
Hang on now.
Same video, though.
Yeah, it is the same link, yeah.
Same one. Okay, hang on a sec. Yeah, that's it. So this was published by RT Tuesday. Russian MOD's footage of them basically. This was a serious convoy. I mean, it's like 15 vehicles, 80 soldiers. Go ahead and play it there. then it's gone.
Yeah.
But, for about 24 or 36 hours, like Western media headlines, about this brave, incredible foray into Russia. And it was mostly an online job, but the rumors being spread around were this was a Russian separatist movement that had risen up within Russia. So they didn't want it to be a Ukraine versus attack on Russia. They tried to frame this,
Pathetic,
even though they acknowledged they came from within inside Ukraine.
Well,
This next tweet is an example of the thing that was going viral all Monday and into Tuesday. Totally, just it just gives legs to a PR stunt, and it's obviously false on the face of it. Did you get what I just sent you?
It's a picture.
It's a screenshot of a tweet. No good. Okay, I'll just read it out here. Anyway, so this is like from one of these insane war monitoring sites that has thousands of followers. DEFCON warning system is the name of it. It's reporting last Monday, that Belgorod, Russia is under attack by separatists, i.e. the Russians. Russia is moving nuclear weapons out of the area. Reports of declaration of independence, i.e. they're trying to spin, for 24 hours, they seriously tried to spin what happened in the Belgorod region as a separatist movement. So they were, i.e. this is like a part of Russia doing what Zaporizhia or Kherson or the other Donbass, now autonomous republics, themselves did. And at least this DEFCON warning system, people, they put, that last part is unconfirmed in brackets. Totally spurious, totally bullshit. But this is now crystal clear. In the beginning of this, a year ago, you could forgive Westerners for being a bit, there it is now, okay. So look out for these kind of like objective war monitoring accounts. They're bullshit. Many of them really are bullshit. They're just like, they're used to seed basically Pentagon or British PSYOP stunts, to give stuff legs and to give hope, to give copium basically to pro-Ukraine, Slavo-Ukraini types. So that was a great example last week of a real world situation in Bakhmut coming to a head. The actual objective reality of the fact that Russia is 16 times larger than Ukraine, and that even with one hand tied behind its back and using a private military organization, it could take Bakhmut. Not so much, of course, as we explained, it's not so much the taking of the territory as the pushing out of vast numbers of Ukrainian NATO-trained soldiers with the help of Western support. That was the objective thing that happened last week. And so what does the NATO/Pentagon information system do in counter-attack? It creates a PSYOP, a stunt, which has some reality on the ground. There were actually Humvees that went into Russia and, abducted some locals and got them to swear allegiance to the new separatist republic of Belgorod or something, before the Russian Air Force woke up and went, what? Where? Okay, and blew them all away, the result of which was images of American Humvees all over the streets, which,
a few.
Well, there was like 4 or 5 separate ones I saw.
Well, there was Max Pros, a couple of Humvees and a couple of Max Pros. There wasn't that many, it was about 80 people or so, maximum 80 people, with a few armoured personnel carriers and a couple of tanks and a few Humvees and a few of those Max Pro APCs, but the whole thing is a joke. I mean, everything's a joke these days. Basically, everything is a joke. Literally, everything is propaganda and phony nonsense. Really, I mean, there's very little. I don't know what somebody should do a percentage of actual truthful news that appears on any topic, on Ukraine, on the US, on anywhere around the world. That isn't in somewhere or other in the mainstream media. That isn't in somewhere or other slanted or seriously slanted. It's always been slanted one way or another, but these days it has got to the point that it's just a clown. It's like I can't take it seriously. I can't take any of it seriously, and I can't even people who claim to be, or who appear to be, sober, measured commentators on a topic, are also clown shoes. They're just clowns. You know what I mean? Especially if they're Americans. Overwhelmingly, if they're Americans or European commentators particularly on Ukraine, but on Ukraine or China or Russia,
anything outside of the realm.
Anything outside of the realm is like they have a massive distortion to what's actually going on, and it's all about what we want to be true as opposed to what is true.
Right, because it makes us feel better about ourselves as Westerners or Americans.
They've lived for so long high on their own propaganda that they literally can't see reality anymore. You know, and that includes the media, and they just report stuff. And people, I don't think most people understand just how false most of what they hear about major world events actually is from the media, the reporting they get. Most people don't understand how massively distorted it is, and it's distorting ordinary people's perception of the world as well. They're trying to encourage other people to join them in Moo land, you know, where their take on reality is just, you know, a joke.
Yeah. There was another less intensive PSYOP type incident that took place later in the week on Thursday. Again, the real world thing that happened, we can take as a given. Yes, this was reported by the Russian Ministry of Defense, but they released video footage of what took place. They reported that one of their reconnaissance ships, which is part of the Black Sea Fleet, which was not far from Turkey. It was on its way south to the Bosphorus Straits. The ship's name is the Ivan Kurs, or Kurs. They released footage of what they said was the ship not torpedoing, just shooting at with a heavy machine gun. And they describe it as 3 unmanned drones. Mm-hmm. Basically, in this case, obviously waterborne, and they were like speedboats, small speedboats, kind of heading towards the ship in a zigzag motion. But it was being strafed by fire, and this one detonates. And I think they described them as explosive-laden speedboats. The point was to ram the ship to try to sink it, right? Mm-hmm. That was the claim. They had footage to back up the claim. And immediately there was this swarm of NATO jumping on it, especially when they got some help along the way from footage from the other side, the Ukrainian side, saying, no, they didn't. They hit one. Yes, that's their video showing one of these speedboats detonated. Here's another video. They claimed, I think this is worth actually watching for people to get an idea of how good they are at faking shit, because this video looked seriously real. This is Kiev's response to the Russian MOD. They said, no, we have video as well, and it shows the Ivan Kurs being hit by one of the speedboats at least. If it's not in the opening tweet on this thread I've just sent you, Damien, I think it's the second one down. Okay, so that's the Russian one. You can play that. It's quite clear. Kaboom. It's gone. That was May 24th. May 25th, that's my response. If you scroll down one more, this one. So this is a response I got from Null Reports. This is another one of those pro-Ukraine objective war monitoring Twitter accounts. This is the video they got. That's a speedboat being shot at. You see the... Oh, hang on. It's getting real close here. Oh, it's right. Oh, that must have hit it, right? And NATO trolls were like, oh, yeah, this is awesome. The hopium and the copium, they got a real hit from that, literally. 24 hours later, I noticed there was a splice in the video. The speedboat's footage initially is heading towards the front of the ship, and then at the end, after the splice, it's at the back. So that made me go, Now scroll up to the second tweet. This is the Russians the day after that.
Scroll up.
Oh, sorry, scroll the other way. Upwards. Go up the page. Up, yeah. This one, the Sputnik. So we can watch it or not. It's basically footage of the Ivan Kurs ship returning to port at Sevastopol on Friday. Intact. Not hit. So that footage, the second video, is fake. Yeah, you can play that there.
Well, yeah,
returning to port Friday.
It may or may not be fake, because it's possible that the kamikaze drone. That's some nice music. The kamikaze drone unmanned drone, unmanned boat drone.
Hit it, but didn't detonate?
Didn't detonate. Yeah.
Okay, it's possible.
Yeah, which wouldn't be surprising, because it's fairly a relatively new technology in that sense, I mean, they have used I think in the Second World War they used drones, explosive laden kind of unmanned boats and ships as part of, not extensively but partly in the Second World War, as a trial or whatever. So it's not something that's not a new idea, but it's certainly not something that has been extensively used in actual, real time situations. So obviously you're not going to necessarily, get it right all the time.
I wonder if that was used for the USS Cole. They described it as a dingy suicide attack, i.e. there was a nutter jihadi on
the USS Cole was
from the inside out.
Yeah, it was no, it was explosives, just below the waterline, I think. Planted. That was an inside job. Like that was the US themselves or CIA, whatever, blew up their own ship. They're not averse to blowing up their own stuff, as we know, when it serves a geopolitical purpose. Yeah. So yeah. Bakhmut fell, and it wasn't a big deal. It used to be a really big deal, but it's only a big deal. It's like it's something that any conflict, any battle that the Ukrainians appear to win, or the Russians appear to retreat, then that's shouted from the rooftops. When the Ukrainians get their asses handed to them and lose 30,000, 40,000 soldiers at least. I mean, Prigozhin, how do you pronounce it? Prigozhin published somewhere anyway a list of the amount of people the amount of Ukrainians and
the battalions,
the amount of Ukrainian personnel and a list of other equipment, basically from tanks, planes, etc., all that kind of stuff that he claims Wagner have destroyed since the beginning. Since March 2022, March last year, and he has something like 72,000 Ukrainian soldiers killed, plus this long list of other equipment all destroyed.
And that's all of Wagner's engagements.
Yeah, all of them engagements.
Before and
but
during
something
Bakhmut.
like 30 to 40,000 in Bakhmut, somewhere between 30 and 40,000 killed and or. Is it? I think it's. We looked at it last week. Killed, actually, 30,000 killed, and almost twice that injured.
Injured, which is your 100,000 figure, which Biden just claimed. He just heard that and flipped it round, and everyone sided with Biden.
No, that's not the 100,000. It's 30,000. It's total 60,000. Say total 60-some thousand.
Okay.
30,000 killed, 30-some thousand killed, 30-some thousand injured. That's just in Bakhmut, though.
That's a very high kill to injury rate, though, isn't it? It's usually like 4 or 5 times the ratio.
That's the commitment of the Ukrainians. Yeah. They send the injured ones back in.
Who knows?
Yeah, so, and then it all goes quiet, basically, except, obviously, like you said, they divert the thing to, I mean, it's just LARPing.
It's information-wise, it goes quiet, but there's still, like, busy business going on. Ben Wallace went to Kiev last week, British Defence Secretary. Quote, in an attempt to personally find out what is happening with Zelensky, and to personally assess the readiness of the Ukrainian armed forces for a large-scale offensive. So does Lindsey Graham last week for about the 6th time in the last year. He loves going to Kiev, the creep. This has kind of gone viral, even in the mainstream, which is, rare. But I'm glad it was so vile what he said there that I think it's actually shocking the believers.
Yeah.
They're a bit like... Do you remember when Hillary Clinton made that statement about Muammar Gaddafi? I think ordinary Clintonites heard that and went, that's really twisted. That's not how I would feel about this, much less what I would say about it.
Right.
We came, we saw, he died, ha, 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 ha. So this is there. Let's watch this. This is Lindsey Graham this week. I suppose what he was trying to say to Zelensky was, we've got your back no matter what happens. It's unconditional. He was trying to, in his vile psychopathic way, he was trying to express unconditional love. But this is what came out.
Free or die.
Free or die.
Now you are free,
Yes.
and we will be.
And the Russians are down.
It's the best money we've ever spent.
Thank you so much.
Best investment ever made. Best investment.
They only showed a bit of it.
Hmm?
He goes on to next say, something like we get to kill Russians.
No, he says Russians are dying.
Oh, he did say that
He just
there?
said that, yeah.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
That's not the first time he said it. Last year.
That's a Southern gentleman right there. Likes a bit of death. Likes a bit of Russian death, you know.
Well, this is something that those critics in dissenting voices, mostly conservative type, not just in the US but in Europe as well, need to get into their heads. They think that it's to be skeptical of a war is to amplify and highlight and point out that Ukraine is a money laundering scheme. It's a waste of money. When we spend trillions in Ukraine, but we don't have enough for housing programs or social programs at home, you know, they think that it's a sink in a sense that it's a complete waste of money. They don't see there's no gain for this at all. No, in Lindsey Graham's head, this is not the first time he's expressed that from a material financial point of view. This is I believe him when he says that this is the best money the United States government has ever spent. We're getting to have a punching war with Russia where literally you are the gloves for us and we don't get...
You're the head that's getting punched.
You're the head that's getting punched, yeah. And we get to order you to go here with our HIMARS, with our Humvees, with our Storm Shadow cruise missiles, with our Patriots. And not on paper, not a single American gets killed.
Yeah, it's a dream come true for a warmongering kind of
Cold warrior type.
Yeah,
who always saw the evil commies. As,
you know. But mad, you know, mutually assured destruction, preventing you from ever really going to any significant lengths, actually having any kind of direct contact with your evil ideological enemy. And now you've got this third party that's willing to just like suck it up, you know, and keep going, and it seems to just keep snorting the propaganda you feed them, you know what I mean? And we can keep this going until the last Ukrainian, technically, you know what I mean? If their propaganda is so well received, it seems, and so powerful that you know, they could like have, you know, conscript the women soon, you know, and get the women in there and get them all, you know. There might be actually literally no Ukrainians left, you know, if they had their way, you know, in their, you know, fanciful ideal world. Every single Ukrainian would die fighting Russia. And then, well, you lost your entire population, but tough shit. Yeah, I'm sure you'll rebuild eventually. But, geez, we certainly give the Russians a hard time over that, you know, 20 years that we were fighting that war, Ukraine war. It was great. Yeah. We made a lot of money. We got those Europeans to offload all of their old American military supplies that were doing nothing, that were just rusting away type thing, or, you know, expensive to keep them, you know, maintained, all that kind of stuff. F-16s, for example. Can't wait till those F-16s get over into Ukraine, you know, because they'll all be shot down. They'll all be, you know, taken out of storage in European countries. These are American planes taken out of storage. And then, of course, the Europeans have to buy nice, shiny new ones, you know. So there's a lot of money to be made in this situation, you know. And that's another reason why it's the best investment people like Lindsey Graham have ever made, on behalf of the American people, of course, because they're investing American tax dollars in this.
And part of the entire package is German industry moving to the United States.
Right.
But you've got no more cheap Russian gas. Sorry, we blew up Nord Stream. Come on over here. For what it's worth, that's a great statement. It's really like pushing the envelope on it. Russia's Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokesperson Maria Zakharova, commenting on this evil quip by Lindsey Graham, by mentioning that during the Nuremberg trial, the Minister of Economics for the Nazi regime, Jan Marschalk, also stated that the sponsorship of the Third Reich had come from abroad, and named the two largest American corporations at the time, Ford and General Motors. An unspoken deal was made with him, freedom in exchange for his silence. Despite the protests of the Soviet representatives in Nuremberg, Schacht was released and lived to be 93 years old. I suppose that's her oblique, but, you know, pertinent comparison to then and now. I mean, there are Nazi comparisons to be made between the two wars, essentially the two conflicts. To what extent did the US fund the Nazi war machine? Quite a big extent. It's not the whole package, but Britain and the Bank of England certainly was involved. Schacht was very close to then. Was he head of the Bank of England? No, it must have been the US Treasury Secretary Morgenthau. All through the 1920s, he was basically a protege of Western central bankers. Yeah, we are kind of reliving. There's a similar dynamic, and now of course they're flipping it around. The media now is flipping around where no, now it's Russism. That's Nazism. It's the Russian playing the Hitler. But if you see through that bullshit, this is closer to the replay of history,
right?
If that's what it is.
Yeah. Well, it's similar to what wars have always been, which is that certain powerful, wealthy individuals or institutions who finance the war on both sides. Basically, it's a racket. Yeah, it's designed to make money. It's designed to, first and foremost, make a lot of money, but also to change geopolitical power dynamics within certain regions of the globe, whatever. So that if you can destroy or embroil a country in a major conflict and there's a lot of death and destruction, it's vulture capitalism, right? It's like the opportunity is ripe afterwards to move in and make deals, and so it's sowing chaos so that you can profit from it, basically.
So Graham's glee there is financial, mostly.
Yeah, and ideological.
Okay.
We get, and it's also protectionist in that respect, where they think that they're bolstering U.S. hegemony, global hegemony, or keeping it propped up
for his grandkids, if he has any.
Well, for himself primarily, I'd say, just to keep, because his position, him being able to fly around the world, meet Zelensky and be feted there, and his position and his notoriety, let's say, is all based on America being, in the position that it's in, that it has been in for the past, let's say, 100 years or so, which is the global hegemon. You're representative of the best team, basically. If the wind was blowing in a certain direction where you were going to take your country and was going to take a hit in that respect and going to be downgraded, in many different ways on the global scene, and become a kind of second-rate country, well, then you're a second-rate politician by definition as well.
Yeah.
It's narcissism and self-absorption. It's you don't see many. What about who's Lindsey Graham? He's a politician, right? Just politician, right?
Yeah.
He's more like just a politician.
Yeah,
He's not in government, right? So how many politicians from Guatemala do you see in the news? From just a politician in the
I don't ever.
You don't ever hear about them?
Well, I might.
You don't get
something has to happen.
They don't get in the media though. No, just when they go on a visit,
I know they exist.
Well, why don't they go? Why aren't we hearing about a politician from Guatemala showing up in Kiev and meeting Zelensky?
No money. Or no money to give.
Yeah.
No influence to peddle.
Right. So yes, what I'm saying is America's going to become Guatemala. Banana become the equivalent of Guatemala.
It's well on its way, in some respect. Which is not fair to Guatemala because they're probably on the up, There
was an interesting video I saw. Where's the video from? Just throw this one up. I posted this. It was from it's a CNN. That's right. Yeah, it was on CNN. I was browsing CNN as I seldom do.
God help you.
And I saw, just play this video. It's a CNN exclusive about. Hang on a second. Just pause there. It's a CNN exclusive of the training by Western individuals, military individuals from Western countries, training Ukrainians on how to. Well, have a listen.
So after 3 or 4 days in the cold, if you're leaving it outside or there's no heating, these will last probably 3 weeks.
Ukrainian troops get a lesson on covert bomb making.
And that goes through your battery.
British explosives and counter-insurgency specialists pass on decades of know-how to soldiers already well versed in normal frontline combat.
Intentionally blowing up property, showing just stuff.
But
Killing
these
somebody-
are
killing
no
people.
ordinary bombs. They are secret weapons in Ukraine's clandestine arsenal to kill Russians on Ukrainian land.
If we have a high priority target,
Back to
we
the beginning.
of course use a
So after 3 or 4 days in the cold, if you're leaving it outside or there's no heating, understand? Yeah. These will last probably 3 weeks. Yeah.
Was there?
Uk-
After 3 or 4 days, if there's no heating and you're leaving outside in the cold, it'll last about 3 or 4 weeks.
He sounds a bit like you.
He sounds a bit like me. That's because that guy is
Was
from...
that you?
That was me. That guy is from Northern Ireland. And that just...
That's what it is.
It popped up. His accent is from Northern Ireland. And of course they mention... This is... he's a counter-insurgency specialist from Northern Ireland. I wonder where he got his experience from.
A specialist in murdering people.
And he's given Ukrainian soldiers a lesson in covert bomb making. And passing on decades of know-how in killing people and blowing up property, showing the Ukrainians just how it's done. Of course, chances are this guy, given his accent and where he's from, that he's a terrorist. This man is literally a terrorist.
A British terrorist.
He's a British terrorist from Northern Ireland, and he was most likely, the knowledge he personally has or was passed on to him, that was developed that he is sharing, was very likely gained as part of the British government's dirty war in Northern Ireland during the 1970s and 80s and 90s, when people like this individual who's speaking there covertly used bombs to kill innocent people and blow up buildings. Very often these were attacks and bombings and murders in the UK carried out by people like him, members of the British establishment, that were then blamed on the IRA as part of the quote-unquote dirty war, or the covert counter-insurgency war that they were waging against the IRA in Northern Ireland, like I said, during the 70s, 80s and 90s. And now it's wonderful because you'll be able to share that wonderful knowledge with the Ukrainians and teach them how to...
Yeah. And the British reporter narrating over it.
Yeah.
In no way sort of has no self-awareness that maybe he ought to present this in a kind of nuance. This is a war after all. No, he's like, decades of experience in killing people. Now they will get to kill Russians. Oh,
Yeah.
like he expects the listeners to actually share that fucking emotional vibration with him.
Yeah.
Okay, dude, you psycho. On this point, this popped up in the Wall Street Journal this week. I'm not sure you'll be able to open this. It could be behind a paywall, Damien. If not, I have the quote anyway. People should be able to see the headline. The British are maybe going too far. Well, who knows? We saw Lindsey Graham's loving the killing of Russians, but I do wonder sometimes. This headline suggests that the US and the UK are split on the Ukraine war. Byline, the British are more assertive, the Americans more worried about provoking Russia. Possibly true, possibly BS, posturing, whatever. That sentiment could be the case. So if you scroll down, do a word search for SSR, initials S. Oh, you won't be able to. It's behind a paywall. Okay, well, people can check it out, or I'll post a link to it from somewhere else probably after the show. So there's a quote in it, right? Special forces, like the British terrorists we just heard gleefully, training Ukis on how to kill Russian civilians, or military ostensibly. Special forces from the British Army's SAS and SRR regiments, remember them? SRR, created after 9/11. Probably the assassins of Charles Menendez, the Brazilian guy who was working on the London Tube just before 7/7 attacks. Special forces from the British Army's SAS and SRR regiments and the Navy's SBS units are operating very close to the front lines in Ukraine, serving as key interlocutors between NATO intel officer efforts and Ukrainian forces. Now, this was picked up by the Russians themselves, and on the basis of this, specifically citing this Wall Street Journal report, Russia is now threatening to fucking sever ties with the UK. Like, it's done. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how this is where it goes next. If you want to talk about an escalation, you start closing the embassy. It's not just that you're kicking diplomats out in a tit for tat. You just pack the whole thing down altogether. Headline in RT: Russia could cut diplomatic ties with the UK, and they're citing the Russian Foreign Ministry on this. Paragraph 2: the Wall Street Journal reported last week the quote I just read out about British Special Forces operating close to the front line, training UCROPs in basically terrorist activities. And the reply by the Russian Foreign Ministry to RT Friday said, "We're well aware of these consistent efforts by London aimed at providing military assistance to the neo-Nazi regime in Kiev. We can't rule out that the British participated in the planning and organisation of support of terror attacks carried out by Kiev on the territory of Russia, not least the blitz of attacks we saw this last week." Where exactly do they threaten to cut ties? Scroll down a bit more. I can't remember where it says it in here. It says it loudly in the headline anyway. That would be where this goes next. Like, it wasn't just the UK. I think elsewhere, I think I saw a Russian media report. Like, we've just about had it with Poland, possibly Finland as well, or something, or maybe one of the Baltic states. And we're thinking of just closing embassies altogether. Okay, it's another escalation. It's another so what, blah. But that historically is the next step before the missiles start flying. Maybe history doesn't repeat exactly. I know hot war can't go to mutually assured destruction, nuclear war, blah, 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 and they won't do that. But that's where we're at.
Yeah. I think they think that it's all manageable these days. You know, to a large extent, it's like we were saying, war is a racket. They're doing it. None of it's personal. At least those in the US don't see it as this isn't personal necessarily against, despite all their rhetoric, anti-Russian rhetoric, and Putin's a dictator and an evil person, blah, blah, blah. None of it's personal. You know, they're in it for themselves and their own personal profit and self-aggrandizement and, you know, American supremacy, basically. That's what they're pushing, which is all, like I said, personally motivated. And they're playing a game, you know. I mean, it's not for no reason that Brzezinski called the previous the previous wars between great powers as the great game, and calling it or the grand chessboard, you know. It's hard to get into the heads of these people in terms of seeing it in that way, but if you look at the way they act, the way Lindsey Graham was, you know, just smiling and laughing, saying, yeah, it was a great investment. You know, you're talking about, you know, hundreds of thousands of dead Ukrainians. And he's saying, it's a fantastic investment. Love it, love it. I wish I could find more investments like this around the world, you know.
Yeah.
To him, it's just like an investment, you know. And none of it's personal. These people live in this kind of rarefied atmosphere, in this, you know, very detached reality where none of that means the same thing that it means to you and me or the average person in the street. You know, we kind of, there's a lot of supposed hand wringing or pearl clutching over people dying, and it's a terrible thing. But for him, it's like, this is the way the world always was and always will be. And it's, you know, he's just a descendant of people many people have come before him who had exactly the same perspective on conflict. And of course, there's intel agencies in the West who have been, you know, fomenting these kind of wars and waging these kind of wars, these kind of proxy wars for quite a long time, for, you know, most of the last kind of century. And it's par for the course. It's politics. It's, what's the phrase? War is politics by another means.
Yeah,
that's the way they see it, you know.
Yeah.
So people,
until they're paying a price.
Yeah, but when they start to see that it might go wrong for them, they basically just back out. You know, they just walk away.
Yeah,
and they can flip the script. They can could flip the script on Russia, whenever they want. You know, Russia could at any point be brought back into the international community by these people. That's how they see it. They see themselves as holding all the cards, effectively. You know what I mean? And that at any moment they could just put one over on the population, and within 6 months, let's say, everybody would have forgotten about Putin, the dictator, and evil Russia, and you know, it could be the G8 again, and Putin would be shaking hands with Macron and Biden or whoever is in power, and that's the way they see it. I'm not saying that's the way it's going to go, but that's the way they see it. This is all just, and that's why it comes across as a joke and kind of clown shoes and kind of like almost like it's unreal in a certain sense, because it is unreal. There's a big gap between the way these politicians and intel operatives who are actually waging these conflicts, fomenting and waging these conflicts, between the way they see it and the way they respond to it, and the way the average person does. And in fact, they encourage a different response in the average person to their own response. They want people. That's what propaganda is, right? They want people to do the pearl clutching and the hand wringing and buy into the evil, you know, goodies versus baddies, that kind of stuff, when they don't see it that way at all. Mm-hmm. And that's why there's this disconnect between when people have those thoughts and ideas and feelings about a certain situation, certain conflict, that's encouraging them by the media, and then they look at how politicians talk about it, and there's this kind of like, you know, they sound like they're lying, or they sound like they're not.
They sound like they're enjoying suffering.
Right, they're not enjoying. They're not using the right words, if you know what I mean. There's some disconnect there, you know, and it makes people think this is all one big like kind of show, you know.
Well, you remind me of Madeleine Albright in the 1990s.
Right.
She's asked, "Do you think?" She's told by the reporter, you know, see, the UN reports that 500,000 children have died as a direct result of the United States sanctions against Iraq. Mm. And she reflects for a minute. She says, "Do you think the price was worth it?" Yes, I think the price was worth it.
Yeah, and the same one was told about. The same one was said. Was it her? No, it was Barbara Bush. Barbara Bush was asked about the same conflict, about the first Gulf War, and under Bush Senior, and she was asked about body bags coming home, dead American soldiers coming home, and she kind of interrupted and said, "Listen, I don't think I should upset." I don't know if she said upset, something like upset my beautiful mind by talking about body bags, by thinking about body bags. Right? It's nothing to do with me, you know. This is what human beings do. We're here. We, the politicians, are here just to rule over the ordinary people in this world. And every now and again, the ordinary people in this world decide that they want to go to war with each other and kill each other. And it's always been that way. And who are we?
We're just facilitating it.
We facilitate it and encourage it, maybe. Well, no, we won't admit that. But yes, that's what happens. But anyway, that's just what happens. And, you know, it's not a big deal, Neil. You know, just detach yourself from it all and keep your eye on the money. Another
update from, I know, the Russian Ministry of Defense last week, this time on bio-warfare and engineering viruses as a weapon against people. Who would ever do such a thing? Great Twitter account. People should follow this guy, Clandestine. So he's commenting on the publication. You can see the source there, Russian MFA. I think that's the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, actually, with slides and everything. So the summary is that the Russian military collected bioweapons samples from this biosphere reserve in Kherson region of avian flu strains with the ability to cross species barrier, and with, I presume they claim, a human lethality rate of 40%. Okay. Tweet number 2 in this thread, Russian military shows evidence of the United States Department of Defense funding for the studying of bird migration at various biolabs in Ukraine, alleging that the US has contingencies to use bird migration to spread highly lethal human-engineered pathogens from Ukraine. Not the first time I've heard that, actually. Mm-hmm. Maybe it was the Russians before this all kicked off. Mentioned that as a possibility. tweet number 3, the US military is actively studying these economically significant infections. I wonder if that's the actual term they have in the American documents the Russian military has published, because that would again speak to what we've just said, economically significant infections, and how they would see such a thing. Because the rest of us is like, no one would do that. Actually, they would, and they would do it for economic reasons. They would do it not so much to wipe out a rival population, because they would be aware that if it infects one ethnicity here, it's likely to cross into other species and come home and bite us in the ass. But it can cause enough of a problem and sickness in an area so as to depress it economically. So that's a longer term game, and that would be how they see it.
Yeah.
You know. So I'll just finish there. The US military is actively studying these economically significant infections outside the national territories, that Ukraine, in biolabs located along the borders of geopolitical adversaries.
Well, there was a spokesman for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I don't think we showed this last week, but it's from a couple of weeks ago. I posted on Twitter. It's the spokesman for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in China. Chinese. I won't pronounce his name. You can look at it there. Just click on the link below on the actual. Yeah. Okay. There's his name at the top, and he just tweeted this. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokesperson. That's him. On May 10th, the Pentagon has reportedly made plans for hitting opponents with genetically engineered weapons. The genomic data of Asian, Chinese, European, Aryans, and Middle Eastern Arabs, all on a list to be collected by the US military. He just threw that one out there, and there you go. But this China, so it's all lies, right? And then that obviously when you read that and you think about COVID, genetically engineered weapons, that's technically, effectively what SARS-CoV-2 was. It's a genetically engineered weapon. It's genetically engineered virus that was used as a weapon. It was more global in scope. Obviously, it wasn't ethnically specific, but it gives you an idea that the Chinese government is clearly aware of this possibility of this being a clear and present danger, and something that the Americans have been working on and thinking about doing probably for quite a long time. So when it answers the question of what happened in Wuhan in January, February 2020, when they supposedly the Chinese freaked out, and had this severe lockdown, that then the West went, oh, that's a good idea. But the Chinese clearly saw it as a bioweapon initially. That's why they had that response. And in fact, other European countries also saw it as a bioweapon. The ones that weren't in the know, let's say Italy, for example, which was the first real country in Europe that was affected by SARS-CoV-2. They clearly activated their bioweapon protocols when they immediately started using military transport, military personnel, military transport to take bodies from morgues, and that obviously increased that facility, or led to the fear factor and the fear and loathing that was going on at the time, and then that continued on, that spread, and they ran with it, and they said, listen, this is good. And as I think it was Brazilian, actually Bolsonaro, I think, said it. He said that in the aftermath, a year or two after the COVID, quote unquote, pandemic, that wasn't really, he said that the Western countries got a taste for totalitarianism. They got a taste for authoritarianism or authoritarian rule as a result of COVID, that it provided them the opportunity to dabble with authoritarianism and totalitarianism, and the scary thing is that they actually liked it. They all enjoyed it. Of course, they enjoyed it. But it was all, the source of it was the fact, so the point is the source was a genetically engineered virus, probably engineered in Fort Dix or Fort Detrick. Is it Fort Dix or Fort Detrick?
Dix is like a slang.
Yeah.
Fort Detrick.
Right. Is that the same
Same
place?
place.
Then, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So Fort Detrick, and it
Something-
was dropped off in China as a bioweapon. Yeah. But it had a
Yeah.
global. The intent was global, obviously.
Yeah.
To impose a global totalitarian lockdown.
I want to come back to an earlier thing you were saying just there that gets lost, I think, when people come down on one side or the other. No, that's all conspiracy theory. Or they go full conspiracy theory. It was all a scam. It's a scamdemic, right? They missed an important detail, which is that the biowarfare protocols that were rolled out for this thing to work at the time in February, March, April 2020 were genuine. So when Italy has people in hazmat suits and their military vehicles lining up to collect body because no one wants to go to the morgue or doctors don't want to go to hospitals or anything, it was genuine. I think it was genuine on the part of most people, actual functionaries
Yes, of
in
course.
the government at the time.
People who-
So it was so genuine that they were so desperate, the Italian government, even though Russia was already persona non grata in the West as a result of 2014 and Kiev and Crimea and all that, appealed to and got help from. The Russians sent an emergency team over to help them investigate what was going on. They genuinely didn't know. That's what people, when they get into that, they just dismissed, well, it was all a scamdemic. There was nothing to it. People in power at the time weren't sure whether there was nothing to it. That's why China's reaction was genuine.
Yeah.
That's why Iran's was genuine and Italy's. After that, it gets dodgy because there's a several month lag when Washington and London suddenly go full lockdown. By which point, China's already published enough papers to show that the thing is bloody mundane. You know. Anyway, so yeah, minor detail. But the more general point, can you remember who it was that first even went into this territory, this idea, this notion at all, that there would be people out there dreaming up bioweapons, ideally ethnic-specific bioweapons, to use on people?
Who
That surely, was that yourself who put that together for the original Science page 20-something years ago? The ethnic-specific weapons. No one else would talk about it. That was just one kooky conspiracy side. And now here we are 20-some years later, and the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs is tweeting it.
Yeah, because it's
Yeah, it's happening. You know?
Well, I think they all have known that it's been something that research has been conducted into it for a very long time.
But the general public was just recently introduced.
Yeah. I mean, it's something. It's as old as genomics, right? It's as old as you know. You can bet your ass that as soon as they kind of isolated, were able to basically conduct genetic experiments and isolate genomes and all that kind of stuff. You can bet that from the get-go, somebody went, "Hey, we could use this, couldn't we?" But obviously, you know, as technology develops, the ability to use it increases over the years, and you know, we got to the point where it's probably quite a long time ago that they were able to do, you know, to modify. It is a long time ago that they were able to modify viruses. I'm talking like, I don't know exactly, like say 20, 30 years at least. But it's only in the past. It was only in 2020 that someone in the intel agencies in the US decided that it was
Time to use it.
Time to do something with this. You know,
It got in the news this week.
what did?
Well, is that fair? No, it got into the internets this week. The whole banana about the pandemic and that it originates in Fort Detrick. People, we won't play it here because this presentation is 20 minutes long, but it's got millions of views. You've probably seen this. If you haven't, this is David Martin, the American Dickie Bow wearing guy who's been, you know, speaking out about COVID origins since this all began. Speaking as part of a panel at the European Parliament in Brussels this week. Kim.com's picked up one quote from what he said. COVID-19 was an act of biological warfare perpetrated on the human race. It was a financial heist. Nature was hijacked. Science was hijacked. I found one media report about this presentation at the European Parliament. It's Hong Kong's English language daily tabloid. There isn't a single, they just ignored it. They literally ignored it. There is not a single European or American or Anglophone, the English-speaking world, article about this presentation. So this was the headline the Hong Kong Standard went with. It indeed is what Martin said in his presentation. US intentionally reads COVID virus in Wuhan. EU summit told.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the truth is out there, but Jesus, it's just ignored.
Yeah, the reason the Chinese know that, obviously, and have known it from the get-go. That's why, like I said, they activated their biowarfare protocols and responded in the way that they did. They knew from the get-go that this was genetically engineered, and that it was very likely the Americans who had dropped it on their doorstep. But the Chinese they've alluded to it. In fact, over the past couple of years, the Chinese, I don't know if it's probably the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, have asked questions about. They've even spoken, not just on Twitter, but they've spoken openly about asking the US to investigate Fort Detrick and investigate the actual origins of this virus. Except they've alluded to it, but they don't want to make too much of a stink about it because it would expose the fact that they were very foolish in allowing, or maybe they don't have a lot of control themselves. The Chinese, I don't know, in terms of that kind of research. That gain of function research that goes on in various labs around the world, but also notably in Wuhan and in other places in China, in collaboration with Western scientists. Obviously you have Fauci and the NIH funding this kind of research in Wuhan, which is a bit of a red herring in a certain sense, because that kind of research has gone on normally. There was a moratorium placed on it back in 2016, I think, or 17, or maybe 14, and then it was lifted 3 years later because the idea that gain of function research is a really bad idea is a fairly strong argument, but it was lifted again. But I don't know if even the moratorium, I'm sure the actual research never really stopped, and so it's something that has been going on for quite a long time, and it's obviously got a lot of there's a lot of sketchy stuff about it in terms of, at least just if only on the theory that you're weaponizing or making viruses more dangerous, and in specifically in the case of gain of function, it's nearly always to make viruses that aren't transmissible to humans. So it sounds like a really bad idea, right? Just on first blush to anybody, but of course they have their narratives about how we have to do this because it's going to happen naturally anyway. So we got to get in first and
ahead of it,
see what's going to happen, and so we
get ahead of this thing
and develop a vaccine for it or something. It sounds like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Anyway, that's their narrative, and the Chinese have been involved in that, in that gain of function research. So the Chinese government probably doesn't want to talk too much or too openly or too loudly about the origins of COVID, of SARS-CoV-2, because it's not that it came out of a lab in China. It was China's fault that it escaped, quote unquote. As I've said, it's most likely that it was developed in the US and brought to Wuhan with the International Military Games in September, October 2019, and it took off from there. But there is it would become very acrimonious, let's say, or there'd be a lot of recriminations maybe thrown around about the extent of China's association and involvement with gain of function research with American and British and European research institutes, and taking money and all that kind of stuff. It wouldn't go down.
It's a bit
PR point of view for the Chinese public in the current climate. It wouldn't go down very well, let's say. It would expose the fact that
is it a bit like the US government and Israeli government vis-a-vis 9/11? If one of them was to start pushing the other one out of the boat,
right,
they'd both be screwed.
So
there's mutually assured ideological destruction.
Right.
Well, that was my question. I mean, that's why you understand why people kind of tend to have their knee-jerk reaction is not either trying to do this or they're all in it together. And I'm not going to, ever take China's side in this or see China as the victim in this. So I completely sympathize. The head of the Chinese CDC was on that panel for the exercise 201 pandemic that Bill and Melinda Gates organization was running. Not just one of them, I mean several of them in the lead up to 2019, 2020.
Yeah.
George Gow, the guy. Now, interesting, he retired, or was he pushed out not long after the actual pandemic broke out. Is he operating kind of on his own steam, or is he fully like, I'm here as part of the CCP and I'm working hand in glove with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation? You can see why people jump that. And how do you put a paper between them? They're all as guilty as each other. You know?
Except most of those people are all just useful idiots. You know, they're tools. You know, they all get involved in that. They like the fact they're invited to it, and they're at event 201, you know, gaming the situation where you have a coronavirus release. I mean, it's like, it's so funny, like, because it posits there being a group above and beyond groups like that organize event 201. They would not have done that publicly. They wouldn't have had an event 201 publicly where they actually talked about, and they had the whole exercise scenario where they had people pretending to be news anchors and stuff, and then they had the actual people around the table and stuff, you know, gaming it out. Here's, you know, announcing like pretend news stories saying, you know, a coronavirus, you know, a deadly coronavirus has broken out here, whatever, blah blah blah, and how we respond to it. All those people are tools. They have no idea what's going on. But the funny thing is that there's a group beyond that that watches that kind of stuff happening, and then in a certain sense drops those people in it. You know, creates a situation where they look like they might be complicit of something. Do you know what I mean? Imagine you just have a normal, you know, event. And it was a relatively normal event as far as those kind of events go, like normal, like, you know, talking about
of which there have been hundreds since 9/11. There have been bio-warfare attack drills like
all over the place, right?
All of Lower Manhattan's closed for these things for 3 days.
Right. Can you imagine having one of those that presents a certain scenario? Your team has put together a scenario of, say, like a bioweapon attack or a chemical weapon attack or something in New York City, and what we do about it. And there's certain people watching that, know that event, because it takes months and months to plan it. So they know that event is being planned. It's going to be quite public. It's going to be reported in the news. And they decide,
drop
behind
in
the scenes,
real thing.
to just drop it in.
And just have it play
and those
out.
people who are involved in it are like, holy shit, how did that happen? What? Are we like soothsayers?
I still remember the surprise of Peter Powers. He was in private intel security.
7/7,
and he was doing security. His company was basically organizing the drill for a multi-site terror attack on the London Tube to be carried out on the morning of July 7th, 2005.
Yep.
And he's then, after the real thing happens, he's then telling Sky News, I was just sitting there and we were doing the drill, and next thing I'm told, this has really happened. And he's like, it was obviously dropped on him. Of course, people then, this clip of him saying that went viral. Boom, he's complicit.
Right.
See, he's in on it. No, he had it dropped on him.
Yeah. Have a listen to it here.
Issue. Today we were running an exercise for a company, bearing in mind I'm now in the private sector, and we sat everybody down in the city, 1,000 people involved in the whole organisation, but the crisis team, and the most peculiar thing was we based our scenario on the simultaneous attacks on the Underground and mainline station. So we had to suddenly switch an exercise from fictional to real. And one of the first things is, get that bureau number. When you have a list of people missing, tell them. And it took a long time.
Just to get this right, you were actually working today on an exercise that envisioned virtually this scenario.
Almost precisely. I was up until 2 o'clock this morning because it's our job, my own company, Advisor Consultants. We specialise in helping people to get their crisis management response. How do you jump from slow time thinking to quick time doing? And we chose a scenario with their assistance which is based on a terrorist attack because they're very close to a property occupied by Jewish businessmen. They're in the city, and there are more American banks in the city than there are in the whole of New York. A logical thing to do. And I've still got the...
I was going to say, how extraordinary today must feel for you as it unfolds.
Yeah.
You mentioned a few moments ago there our experience with Irish Republican terrorism. And of course, it was very different, wasn't it? Because however perverted their behaviour...
And cut it there. Yeah, I mean...
Quite peculiar.
Talk about conspiracy theory. That's got to be if you go with that, that's just how it happened. That's the coincidence theory to beat them all.
I know.
Can you imagine? You're running a scenario
on 3 precise tube stations,
right? And it actually happens that day. So how do you explain that in a rational way? How do you explain that in a rational world? And if you understand how the world works, and you understand British intelligence, and you understand the war on terror and the origin, the nature of the war on terror, obviously the people.
If COVID showed us anything, is that there are large numbers of people who will seamlessly flip. For them, they can be told by CNN that we're now not in the new normal. Or sorry, we are now in a new normal.
Mm-hmm.
And they go, okay, updating code. You know, that's the meme about NPCs.
Right.
Just downloading and boom. And they'll then adapt their behavior accordingly. They'll think it's normal to be rude or even violent to others around them who are not being new normal with them.
Right.
And so what he's articulating there is how they would respond themselves. You and I would be shocked and notice it and go, okay, there's a glitch here. Something's up. If we jump the gun, jump the shark, whatever the expression is, we will say, he's in on it. And he's conniving. Mm-hmm. But more likely, more plausibly, he really is just
well, he wouldn't be on the BBC talking about it if he was a conspirator, right?
Right.
Or would he? That's where you get into...
Some COVID news this week, actually. Do you see this one? Israeli study finds that they have updated the death toll of all the numbers of people who died in Israel from COVID-19 in the age bracket 18 to 49. And the number is, hang on, let me just check, do some calculations here. It's 0.
0 what? Yeah, 0 young, healthy people.
0 people died from COVID alone.
It says zero young, healthy people.
Yeah, as in they had some other illness.
Yeah.
They died with COVID.
Yeah. Well, whatever. I
Does that not blow your mind, Joe?
No, mainly
because you were saying that the whole time. Yeah,
like repeatedly, over and over and over and over again, and providing evidence that it was the case. But whatever, people can believe what they want, and obviously they do. That's always been fine for people to, my truth, your truth, whatever. There is no the truth, and people get by on that, have done for most of human history, got by on that. But it seems now in the current global climate setup that believing whatever you want, and by that I mean really believing what the authorities say, can actually be come with a serious health risk. I think COVID is at least in its extent, it was the first time that became very, very, very true for a large number of people. That where they believed the official narrative, they believed what government and media said, had serious negative effects on their health and on their well-being. People can believe whatever they want about any topic, about the war in Ukraine, about China, about what's going on in the US, about what's going on in Europe, whatever. They can make, and they just carry on. They say, I don't agree with what you said. You sound like a conspiracy theorist to me. I'm going to go with the official narrative, and they're fine. It doesn't impact them. They can live that lie. As from my perspective, they can live that lie and live it out, and it doesn't impact them whatsoever. But COVID was the first example of how it can be dangerous at certain times. So it's much better to be skeptical and to think twice and be able to think for yourself, rather than just go with the official narrative, because it seems that at least at certain times it pops up in the minds of these people in positions of power and control in the world that they want to do harm to the people, and that includes you. Sometimes they just want to do harm to a small number of people, but in the case of COVID, they wanted to do harm to a very, very large number of people around the world, billions. And if you believe their narrative, then you were in the harm group. You were the group that was going to be and did get harmed. Of course, not everybody got, very few people got directly seriously harmed.
Psychologically.
But a lot of people got psychologically harmed and didn't have a good time at all, and it seriously compromised their sense of kind of mental health and well-being. And, well, that would be an opportunity to kind of, and it did, like we've talked about this before, how it woke a lot of people up, at least those who were able to wake up and able to smell the coffee in that respect and say, hang on, there's something not right about these people and about what they're doing, and I'm not going to trust them anymore, and well done to them, because that hopefully will serve them in the event that something else comes along in the future of a similar nature. But there's so many other people just double down on the official narrative, and they've just set themselves up to be in even bigger shit if something worse comes along. And we've no reason to. That's the problem. Something worse might not come along. That might be the end of it. They might not bother us anymore. But can you really take that risk?
Oh, they're coming. They're coming for us. You take that to the bank. Yeah, the problem is we have to share the world with people who miss lockdowns, who were so addicted to getting the job they went 6, 10, 12 times, and then who think that Roger Waters is a Nazi.
Yeah.
Because he's acting like one as part of a show. Like, how do you can live with them in the sense that you can hear what they're saying and then just, shut it down, shut them up, block them. That's what I do, just block them. But the fact is they're out there, and sooner or later they'll be either telling you what to do and shouting that you're a Nazi in the process. And they'll be cancelling everyone, including Pink Floyd, from performing because, quote, Roger Waters is a Nazi.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to play that? I don't know if you want to talk about that. You do?
Well,
yeah. There's been some a couple of moves that are good and bad on war fronts. So something happened last week that looked like it's going to end a 30-year-old conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Putin hosted peace talks between their two leaders, with the first breakthrough since the two became independent countries after the fall of the Soviet Union, with Armenia formally, at least orally for now, agreeing to recognize Nagorno-Karabakh as Azerbaijani territory. I thought that was interesting. That's one fire that looks like it might be put out before it can be, before the Americans can pour kerosene on it and make it get any worse than it already is. But then breaking news basically this weekend, this is the bad development, it looks like. Possible war on the horizon between Afghanistan and Iran. I noticed this kicked off earlier in the week with the foreign minister of Iran saying, we're not going to recognize the Taliban government, at least for now. And they cited something like, we don't like that they don't let women and girls have an education. Okay, that didn't sound like the real reason. And less than a day later, the Taliban are threatening to take Tehran, and there's footage of all that U.S. military equipment they inherited from Uncle Joe on its way to border points between Afghanistan and Iran. Now, the region is it's desert. It's pretty remote, but they did kick off. There is footage of them firing at a checkpoint. Yes, a remote place, but they killed 2 Iranian border guards. This is supposedly footage of Talibani on the move. You can go ahead and play it there. There's no narration. With, U.S. cannons on U.S. trucks. Okay. There's an AP report here that says 3 soldiers have been killed. That's just on the Iranian side. You can stop that now, Damon. Thanks. Okay, so I'm like, what the hell? Where did this come from? So the Associated Press says the clash comes as the Iranian president earlier this month warned the Taliban not to violate Iran's water rights to the Helmand River. So this is a war over water? But I looked into the issue. It's been, we're talking about a 1970s era treaty in which Afghanistan agreed to not dam the river so much so that some of the Helmand could flow into a very arid part of Iran, eastern Iran. Again, though, it's decades old. Is that the real reason here for this to flare up? A water war? Possibly. This was theorized. Remember those Pentagon reports? Like, by 2020, the UK will be Siberia and there'll be wars for water. That was kind of like predictions of doom around 9/11 for this time period. Climate change will destroy us, blah, blah, blah. Is there some basis for that here? That is what the official Iranian position here is. That's why the Taliban hate us all of a sudden, because we're trying to get them to agree to old treaties and they won't.
Well, it could be. I mean, we're waiting for that other shoe to drop. There's that one you're referring to. Now the Pentagon tells Bush climate change will destroy us. It's 19 years old. Secret report warns of rioting and nuclear war. Britain will be Siberian in less than 20 years. That didn't work out. And threat to the world is great. The threat to the world is greater than terrorism. Water is to go on talking about water wars and stuff like that. Yeah. So yeah, they gave those scenarios as well, but that definitely could be something. But I think the way to tell whether that's the case or not, whether it's a situation, a conflict over water, will be whether or not. I don't think they're going to. Neither Iran or the Taliban would, quote unquote, go to war over that problem. It would, if I don't think, I mean, if you see any kind of, the question is whether or not it's that, or if it's something, if the Taliban or whoever this group is that have been having these skirmishes on the Afghan-Iran border are actually the Taliban, or whether or not they're being put up to it by, the CIA basically, just to give Iran, a problem, because Iran's obviously hasn't been flavour of the month for a very long time. In America, especially not now in the context of Ukraine and the claims that Iran is supplying drones to Russia to use in Ukraine, etc., etc. So, whether or not, if it's a setup in a certain sense, or if it's some kind of a attempt to put pressure on Iran, it would, by the CIA effectively, it would most likely be you'd see it as some kind of terror attacks or something, because the Taliban really don't have the capabilities to wage a full ground war against Iran, right? It's not going to happen, American weapons or no.
But all that material could give Iran problems.
Yeah.
The same problems they've had along that border since the US was occupying.
Right.
After 9/11.
Yeah.
It got me wondering, how is the Taliban funded? Because you remember that Afghanistan's Central Reserves were withheld by the Biden government, and that they would distribute it via NGOs back into Afghanistan. Okay, which ones and to who exactly? A couple of recent reports, CNN, Taliban likely gained access to millions that the US transferred to Afghan government before the collapse, Watchdog says. I've still got a bit of a question about how they left. It looked bungled, rushed, etc. Was it? We'll see. We'll see. If I wasn't the only one to have this thought when this border clash flared up. I'm like, oh, okay, so that's why they left all that shit behind. It's to give Iran not a full ground scale war. They can't. They're too small versus Iran. And Iran, meanwhile, is testing like ICBMs. One this week they tested, claims has a range of 2,000 kilometers. You know, the Taliban we wiped out almost worse than what the US did to them if Iran was actually fighting them. But here's another one, though. This is NBC News last month, 19th April, quoting some... It might be the same watchdog, actually. That's monitoring the Taliban. The headline in NBC was US taxpayers may be funding the Taliban and Afghan terror groups. This is after, so this is now, like post-US vacation of the country. So this is the guy who's head of this watchdog. Scroll down there, Sopko. Scroll down so I can read some of that. The head of the US government watchdog for the war in Afghanistan said Wednesday that the US may have provided billions in taxpayer dollars to the Taliban and Afghan terror groups since the withdrawal of American troops. But even he doesn't know the full extent of the problem. Unfortunately, as I sit here today, I cannot assure you that we are not now funding the Taliban. Nor can I assure you that the Taliban are not diverting it from the intended recipients, which are the Afghan people.
It's how America rolls.
So there's such opacity still over Afghanistan that the guy who's in charge of finding out where the money's going doesn't know. So yeah, CIA.
Mm-hmm.
And did they fully leave? I know they left Bagram Air Base, but are they?
Definitely not fully, no.
There's still financial strings. We know at the very least because of the Afghanistan's reserves are still held in New York and dispersed to the right people. Mm-hmm. So anyway, yeah, it's too early. It's just a border shooting, but it was like, I think they attacked several sites all at once, and it was very much unprovoked in that at least Iranian media is reporting it as just, they just turned up and started firing at police, not at military, at these border checkpoints.
Yeah.
So one to watch.
Are you looking for, it's the 28th of May, so in a few days it's going to be the 1st of June. You know what that means?
Oh, D-Day. Default day.
No, Pride
The
Month.
day at all. Oh, right, no.
Just get your priorities straight, Neil. D-Day.
That doesn't get me excited. D-Day does, though. Default day?
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
No, I know. Janet Yellen this week says, yeah, so it was D-Day, but we pushed it off to June 5th. Yeah. And now breaking news today is that Speaker McCarthy and Biden have tentatively reached an agreement.
They're just fucking with
extend,
people. Like,
I know they are.
They just mess with people's heads, trying to mess with people's heads. I mean, what other reason could there be? I mean, it's like, look,
we're going to default on the
We're
dollar.
doing really important things, you know. You know, I want everyone to remember why they need us, you know. I mean, you talk it all up like, oh, we might default on our debt, blah, blah, blah. And then, no, I won't really. Like, we'll just say we might, and we'll have this, you know, back and forth, and how there's no agreement, and increase some tension and angst and stuff. And then go, it's okay. We're just gonna, you know, change the numbers on the funny money balance. And yeah, it's interesting though, because like, I mean, someone, I can't remember which politician it was, can't remember who it was, some American politician said, listen, we don't have to service our debt. You can't think of the American debt or any national debt in the same way that you think of your debt, your credit card debt. It's not the same. You're going to die. America isn't. Right?
Is that what he said?
Pretty much.
Right.
You're one person, right? And you could die at any moment. And then your debt is what? Just left for someone else to carry the can? No, you're not allowed. America's debt is different. America's is a national debt, right? And it's the entire American population that carries the weight of that debt. And the American population is always going to be there. Forever.
I'd like to see this quote. Do find it for me.
Huh?
No, I'm kidding. Yeah, that is what they basically said.
That's what they said, yeah.
Yeah, over and over.
Which
Not
obviously is not something new. It's how national debt works, right? And why you can keep extending debt further and further.
If you're
down the
America,
line.
no, the others can't. Argentina can't.
Well, no.
Yeah, Russia couldn't. 1998, they defaulted.
Yeah.
The
America
US can. 34 trillion and growing.
Everybody wants the
Let's
dollar.
raise the debt ceiling. 40 trillion.
Yeah.
50, 60.
Yeah.
But before we get on to anything prideful and sinful, prideful mostly, one more war possibly in the brewing. This has been ongoing for a while, but there was a development this week. Serbia sent troops to its border with Kosovo.
Yeah.
After
for the fourth
local
time
police dispersed Serb protests in a kind of a pocket in the north of Kosovo that's majority Serbian population, because they're trying to install ethnically Albanian mayors, and the people aren't having it. Protests, police crush the protests, Serbia sends troops. That could probably be the end of it. That's what happened a couple of months ago as well. Meanwhile, though, there's rumors flying about a colour revolution brewing in Serbia. That could be more posturing, though, by their leader, Vukic, because he's trying to balance East versus West here, and it probably isn't easy. So, we should mention, it's 5:30 our time. Any results yet in Turkey? The runoff of the Turkish presidential elections today.
I think Erdogan's going to win. The guy who had 5% of the vote, the third place guy who dropped out in the first one, he about a week ago or so said, listen, to his voters, he basically said you should support Erdogan. That other guy, that other grandpa guy, we don't know enough about him. He's an unknown quantity. So go with Erdogan. So
I thought you said he swung
initially.
People
were assuming that he would because he was anti-Erdogan. That's what he was
and more lefty
and more lefty, basically. But then he came out and somebody twisted his arm behind the scenes or something, or gave him a sweet deal or something, and he said, "Yeah, go with Erdogan."
Meanwhile, Erdogan said, "Yeah." So, I think this is a quote. I'm not going to look for it, but I saw a brief headline somewhere. Erdogan says opposition challenger is gay. He's not, but that was apparently a slur that worked in his favor, because Al Jazeera is reporting in its live updates as of now, 5:30 CET. Erdogan takes early lead, with counting at ballot boxes opened 56%, and his lead is 55-44.
Yeah, it's kind of done deal.
Yeah, he won. Another statement from the campaign. You know the guy Suleiman, the interior minister, baldy moustache. Don't know his first name. Suleiman. This is the guy who he's gone full anti-America. He does a speech in front of a crowd, like from a balcony somewhere. He's like warning people that if they don't vote for Erdogan, the United States is going to run this country.
Yeah,
he's got some serious track record. In just the last year, Suleiman has said Turkey rejects U.S. embassy condolences. That was for the 2002 Istanbul terror attack. In fact, the Americans were behind it. Remember that? 2 months ago, he said the whole world hates America. And just a few weeks ago, he said to the U.S. ambassador, take your dirty hands off Turkey. And he's also said in the last year that the U.S. was behind the 2016 coup attempt. Yeah, I don't think Erdogan's their guy.
No, he's not. No, he's been explicit about his whole balancing thing. He's just reading from the multipolarity hymn sheet, Russia and China's multipolarity hymn sheet, which is, listen, we got to balance our interests, and we're not going to, bow down to anyone. I think they're following the usual pattern in Turkey, which is Istanbul and Ankara, or the urban areas. The major urban areas tend to be lefty, right? As many cities are, at least in the broadly Western Northern Hemisphere. But then in the more kind of rural areas and Anatolia and stuff around in the centre, basically. So around the Mediterranean coast and in the major cities, you have lefty, but in the centre, largely the centre area, you have Turks, imperialist Turks. who vote for Erdogan.
Ottoman revanchists.
Yes, exactly. So, yeah. So Pride Month, don't know what that is, don't know what it means, doesn't mean anything to me really. But apparently it's a big thing in America. The only thing to say about it is that in advance of Pride Month, which is apparently begins on the 1st of June and is for a month, and when everybody has to remember, to be proud. Everybody has to be pro LGBTQ, etc., supposedly, and forget that Pride goes before fall. Which is very interesting.
Pride Month. Is that anything to do with those Proud Boys?
No, that's not. That's a different kind of pride.
No,
Neil.
okay. No, I need to read up on this.
But there was just a bit of a furor, in a certain sense, short-lived furor in the US recently with Target, which is a chain store that sells clothes and all sorts of different crap. Did basically rolling out. They rolled out across all the stores. They rolled out a Pride, clothes section. Banners, pride, rainbows, that kind of stuff, whatever that means, right? To big up the gay community or whatever for Pride Month. But
rainbows coloured stuff.
Yeah, if you just click on the left one there, you can get a better view of it. It goes. Pride is traditionally just homosexual, but this Target obviously are starting to include or have included tuck-friendly construction and. So swimsuits, tuck-friendly swimsuit was front and center in the display. So that's what Target are selling, and I don't know who's making them. Maybe
is that like a burkini?
Are they made in China? Tuck-friendly? I don't know. So it basically goes beyond homosexuality, which is traditional homosexuality. Obviously, is just male gay, and lesbian, and generally gay men don't want to hide their bits and pieces, they're usually swinging them around, right? Showing them to everybody at every opportunity they get, At least that's my interpretation of gay pride parades. Yeah, but anyway,
we don't know. We just hear the rumors.
We just hear the rumors. So tuck friendly is obviously would be a transgender thing, right?
Right.
Where you want to pretend that you're not a man by tucking your
junk.
Your junk.
Yeah. Transgender, is that like transvestite?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sort of, except these days, obviously, as you know, it goes a bit further. So anyway, there was a bit of an outcry about it, and people were protesting outside Target stores, and then Target backed down and basically started to remove a lot of stuff for Pride. Like at least some, they removed some of the LGBTQ plus merchandise ahead of Pride Month. So, and of course, this follows on the heels of the Budweiser thing, and the culture wars, the culture. It's not even culture wars anymore. What is that? It's gender wars. I don't know. It's gender wars. Where this, at least in terms of transgender people, 0.2% of the U.S. population. So a very small number of people who not saying they should be discriminated against, but they shouldn't be. They're not enough. There's not enough of them to really make it a national issue. You know what I mean? But it's been made a national issue for some reason. You know what I mean? Because we want every single person who feels in any way marginalized in American society to be promoted.
Yeah.
So forget about all the people who, the majority of the population being, white in America, and then you have African Americans, and then you have Hispanics, or Hispanics and then African Americans, who make up whatever, that's maybe 90+% of the population. You want to go to the very ends of the spectrum, you know what I mean? The tiny, less than 1% or 0 point something percent. Look at those people and what their issues are, how they're not being represented, and represent those people as well. More so than you would actually, almost more so than you would represent, at least in terms of the coverage you give them. You want to, there has to be positive discrimination in that respect. You know what I mean?
Affirmative action.
Affirmative action, exactly. That's the term.
Yeah.
So you got to shove this in. You got to get the big majority of
The people who
of homophobic, racist, white and black and
but mostly white,
Hispanic American. You got to get them to mostly white.
all white supremacists.
Mostly white supremacists. You got to get them to. You got to shove it in their faces so that they respect these tiny minorities in the country, and you got to shove it down their throats basically, and say, I know you've got some of that unconscious racism or discrimination or bigotry in you, and I'm gonna get it out of you by force feeding you the values of these tiny minorities, and that's gonna work out perfectly well, especially if you're a business. You know what I mean? Especially if you're like trying to sell stuff to people, like, and obviously you should in theory pander to the large majority of the population who don't want to wear tuck-friendly swimsuits. But anyway, that's that. So there's some hope in the fact that they seem to have backed off a little bit and seen a bit of sense. But who came up with the idea in the first place that let's put in all our stores front and center as soon as people walk in, tuck-friendly, like basically swimsuits for men who want to hide their junk in their women's swimsuits. Like, because obviously it's not a pair of Speedos, right? It's a swimsuit for men.
Right.
It's you have to actually think about it, like, because when I first looked at it, I was like, what is that? It's a swimsuit, okay, and it's got a sign on it that says tuck friendly. It's a swimsuit for a woman that says tuck friendly.
Right.
It just takes a little bit of thinking, not a lot.
Yeah.
But God forbid if like any of my older relatives had to were confronted with that, they would just be like, what? What does he mean? What the fuck is that? It just wouldn't get there. Anyway, so and that obviously comes in the heels of the whole Bud Light thing with that whatever that guy's name, that guy who
Dylan Mulvaney.
Dylan Mulvaney. He even knows its name.
Yeah,
you keep up with the times. Bud Light, putting his face on their cans, and then people.
I keep up with it. I was just trying not to think about it too much.
Yeah, you're best off doing that. Yeah.
No, seriously, like the next outrage comes along.
Yeah, and then you'll be outraged with that.
Twitter's a light. It's like, I can join them, but where's it going to go? It's going to end up, I'm a white supremacist. They're just pure victims.
That's it. That's all.
They're good. I'm bad.
Yeah, just go with that.
If you enter that at all in your mind space, and what you put out into the world as well, and what you say and stuff, you're participating in it. They've already got you. That's kind of my way of a psychic healthy distance from it.
Yeah.
There are some things that I will weigh into, injustices to people, war crimes and stuff. And even then I have to pull myself back because, like you said, at the end of the day, we're dealing with a system, a matrix of lies where the people at the top don't give a shit about your feels. It's like that expression,
Right.
They don't care about your feels, It's all facts to them, economic numbers. And so how invested are you? Are you going to go all the way? Is your outrage going to be you're going to actually sign up and be a participant in a war or in this cultural clash? You have to decide at what point am I like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
But still observe it, take note of it, see how bad it's got. For me, like I couldn't even articulate it yet, but if I did start to think about it, somehow it's bizarre in that it makes a sense that the end of Pax Americana would look and sound like this.
Pride goes before fall, Neil.
That's you said it at the very beginning. It was actually my first thought too. Pride. What comes next? Fall.
Ron DeSantis announced on Twitter that he was sort of on Twitter.
Yeah.
And Musk obviously is a big Ron DeSantis guy. Musk is not a Trumper. Nobody can accuse him of being a Trumper. He thinks Orange Man bad as well. But so he's obviously behind the fact that he, hosted DeSantis' announcement as running for president on Twitter. It was apparently had a lot of technical hitches along the way, but anyway, he did that, and I think and the way people are dividing now, and I see it on Twitter, people like hating on Trump, pro DeSantis. People hating on Trump and vice versa. Obviously, it's pretty acrimonious between the two, and I think it's setting up for my prediction still holds out. and watch it happen. I'm gonna be shoving that tweet that I probably made, like, I don't know, probably 7 or 8 months ago, about a hung election. I'm going to shove that in people's faces. Not that I'm going to notice, but I'm going to show it in people's faces anyway. Anybody's face that I can find, I'm going to show it in. But I don't know. Maybe it'll happen. Maybe it won't. But it would be awesome.
Yeah, I think he's going to need some help, DeSantis, to make a serious dent on Trump supporters and his base.
Yeah.
Yeah, like they get that there's something like inauthentic about him. But just look at this. He announces that he's running on Twitter.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm gonna use social media because that's what Trump did. Trump did massively. He did win the elections with social media in 2016. But there was no contrivance about it. He didn't announce it on Twitter. You know, when I saw that, was my first thought, oh, he's trying to do a Trump because that's what Trump maybe would have done. But that isn't how it happened. It just organically happened that way. People were sharing, and his campaign got around media censorship that way. There's also the funding issue. I think I did a quick calculation. DeSantis has something like $30 million war chest left over from his campaign to run as governor of Florida. Plus he got $80 million so far, I think. That's a combination of donations so far and from the GOP. And Trump's war chest so far is like 30 million, purely donations. So money is going to be a big factor. Yeah, we're going to be able to tell, I think, depending on the official GOP nomination.
Right.
But that still may not be the end of the story, because it depends on what Trump does next if they thwart him at that point. Same for RFK Jr. He's acting like a guy who didn't give any damn what the Democratic establishment says. He's like, we'll see how much he actually, walks the walk. But for me, it's either or. Which of them, one or both, gives two fingers to the establishment of each party, basically doing a Bernie Sanders on them next June. We'll find out then.
And then
running independent or new party platform or something.
Yeah. That's what I think could happen. I'll have to wait and see. But we're talking about the split. Basically, we're talking about the 270 electoral college votes not being reachable by any candidate,
by anyone.
So
Germany has officially entered a recession.
Good. I'll teach them to cut themselves off from Russian oil and gas, sort of, even though they haven't really.
Obviously, that's what caused it. Kissinger turns 100.
Awesome.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Okay.
AI.
What?
AI. Yeah.
Turns 100. No, Kissinger.
Yeah.
He's not really there.
No.
His brain has been uploaded to the Matrix.
Yeah.
And that's right. So he's going to live forever.
He's first. He volunteered.
Funny story from India last week. I think we have to put this up. This is great news. This is the kind of stuff that feckless leadership should do more often, because it makes you laugh. When they're being evil and cunning, and the effects are, God, they make you, it's like nails on a chalkboard. You just want to become an arsonist or something. Oh, that's the wrong art. Sorry. Let me find it here. And yeah. This is from RT, but I did check it, and it is being talked about in Indian media. So a local politician, headline, Indian official drains entire reservoir to find lost phone. An Indian government official, supposedly a food inspector, he was swimming in a reservoir, dropped his phone, or fell out of his pocket, I don't know what. So he ordered that the entire reservoir be drained in order to find it. Enough water to irrigate 600 hectares of farmland.
Some good quality corruption right there. I like to see just in your face
That's
corruption.
straight up, yeah. 2.1 million liters of water
Yeah.
to get your phone. That's what you want, though. You want them to be so, like, you know, unashamed. None of this fucking psyops of getting around, of saying one thing over and over to your face and subtly implanting things into your subconscious. You know, this is what I'm really doing. You know, no, just
be straight up.
Give it to me straight.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's about all I got fit for. There's an ongoing protest movement in Ireland. Watch this space. We've already mentioned it before. First time, though, in this entire episode, it's been going on for about a year. But in this year alone, there have been 125 protests against directed mass migration. But they're calling in Ireland a new plantation, which refers, of course, to the plantations of Scots and Northern Englishers way back in the 1500s and 1600s into Ireland. People are starting to really feel like that's they see the hand, you know, the hand is revealed here and there, where there are literally busloads of people put into usually working class neighborhoods and put up in hotels and so on. To the extent that someone did a check and they asked an official government question of the Prime Minister last week, and they had the numbers, and they said there are 57,000 hotel or B&B beds in Ireland. Am I right, Mr. Prime Minister, that 37,000 of those are currently occupied by people who have arrived on a plane with no papers at Dublin Airport? And it's true. It's crazy. Like, can you imagine, like, 2/3 of the entire hospitality industry is currently housing refugees.
Yeah.
Anyway, the first time, the only development that's worth mentioning is that for the first time, there was a mainstream media poll of people. And this is one Leo Varadkar can't ignore, because you remember he ignored his own government's, what do they call it, a type of poll where they just try and canvass people at random, but it's a select group. This is an open poll, responded to by people and then published by the media. That's different. 75% are against it.
Well, they just have to change their
And
opinion.
the government just calls them all far right. They're all far right. And so people have responded. There's funny memes in response. Right, if we're all far right, yous are all far wrong. Here it is, Sunday Business Post. 3 out of 4 think Ireland has taken too many refugees.
Yeah.
And Ireland is a small wee country. 5 million people.
Yeah.
125 anti-immigration protests.
Yeah.
In just 5 months.
The problem is there's too many high-paying jobs, too many high-paying techie kind of jobs provided by America, because Ireland has bought up a lot of American debt, and in return or the other way around, Ireland got a lot of investment from America in terms of major corporations setting up in Ireland. Ireland in turn buys a lot of American debt, something like 5th or 6th most in the world for such a small country. And then the problem with that is that there's nobody who wants to do any of the crappier jobs anymore, right? Because they're all getting high-paid jobs, and they bring in they see the government at least says, listen, there's loads of scope here for bringing in migrants to do the lower-paid jobs, so we're going to bring them in to keep all you Irish, Celtic Tiger, all you living high in the hog type thing, to keep you all in the conditions that you've been accustomed to from our awesome government policies that sold Ireland down the Swanee to American business interests. So suck it up. Y'all wanted it. This is when you have to pay the piper.
I see.
United Ireland's going to be brown.
With rainbow flags.
Brown with rainbow flags. There you go. There's your United Ireland
bikinis
for you.
you can tuck.
Tuck friendly bikinis, rainbow flags, and not red haired anyway. And
black leprechauns.
With
red beards.
Yes, exactly. Anyway, on that bizarre note, I think we'll leave it there for this week, folks. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the show. Thanks for commenting. We'll be back next week with another one. Don't forget to like all the likey things. Have a good week. See you later. Bye.
Thanks for watching. Bye.
Can't stop the signal now.